starting with this program called Lightburn, and I have already previously drawn out an outline for the face of this clock. That little red dot in the middle is where the clock will pop through, and it's positioned perfectly to go in between the antlers of this deer. I think I'm going to make him a little bit bigger and then shift him so it is still centered between the area where the hands are going to go. So he's set. Now I'm going to add some mountains. So these are closer, and then I've got some other mountains in the background a little bit further away, so it adds a sense of depth. Then I'm going to add a couple of cabins, and these are all in the cabin, and the mountain at the far back here is all in a fill. You can see it's listed as a fill. Lightburn is a whole nother program, but it's what I'm using to do this burning or etching, and also this is in a fill. Now, to really see what it looks like, you can't tell by looking at this screen here, but you click on a preview and it kind of shows you. So I can zoom in, you can see how it fills in some of these other areas, and when it's blown up it'll look a lot better, where this is a line etching right there. And also that depends on the settings that I have turned on in Lightburn, which I'm not going to go into, just to give you an idea of what's going on here. Now if I change, let's say I just change the this green cabin to line, you can see the difference, and I don't think that's as good as this is up here. So I'm going to go back to fill on that. And I'm going to show you what this looks like. The deer looks like as a line drawing. Now I could color that in, which might be kind of cool, and I might try to do it both ways, but as is, fill looks better. Back to fill, that looks better. So I'm just going to go with that, and I might even change that to a fill, which is the purple. So let's see what that looks like. That's a possibility too. I could save that way too, and just save that file so when I do take it out to the laser burner, I'll see. And this also tells me how long it takes. It takes about 50 minutes to burn something like this, so it's pretty time consuming. There are ways you can change this process and make it faster, and those are over here in these settings right here, but I'll just test it with these settings and see how it goes. Again, 50 minutes, and then go from there and see how that looks. I made 3 of these clockhouse designs. This one has a grizzly bear in it. Now there's 2 different options here. One is a line drawing, as this one is, and the other one is a solid fill. So the solid fill areas all are burned, so you have to really make that aesthetic decision. Let's see what it looks like with this animal in there, and that is right there. So I have to pull him off, get rid of this guy. This guy's not bad. I like the idea of putting the hands between the ears. He's a little weighted to the side though, and if I go over here, that's just not going to work. So aesthetics are a huge part of this process, and this is a fill again, so we can see what the fill looks like for this deer. Deer, elk. I think it's a deer. It's a nice looking deer. Anyway, and I can also add these cabins, which here's a cabin. I could put a cabin like way back here, make it a little smaller. There's another cabin maybe right here. Right, I could do that one. Wow, so you're looking at this, don't confuse the colors. better as fills, and he is a fill also. But let's look at him as a line and see what happens there. I'm gonna go back and preview. Line, no. He needs to be a fill. So here we go, we're gonna fill him. So out to the laser, I cut the board to size, make sure that it's gonna fit where I want it to fit on this board. So I cut it to size, and then I find the center of the board, and then I position the laser head at the center, and I just make sure it's fit and positioned right. That's a whole nother lesson I could go into if you want me to. Leave an interest in the comments, and I can take these a step further in terms of lessons and teaching. In any event, I chose to fill this particular deer, and you can see how dark it burns, and this is sped up quite a bit. It's a time lapse, like every 5 seconds it takes a shot and then compresses them all together. So that's what's happening here. Now this is of the bear clock face, and what I've done is set it as a fill, so there's a lot of dark areas. This one's also smaller. I didn't center it on this board, so this would end up being a smaller clock. I'll show you how I take it from these clock faces to the next stage, next step in the process of creating these clocks. But this was a heavy burn. So I have a fan hooked up to the back end of this so it sucks the dust out, so you're not breathing smoke and basically like standing over a fire. Okay, it's not that severe, but regardless, you're breathing smoke, so you want to suck that out. This fan exhausts outside. Yes, I did put a hole in the side of the garage to make that happen, but it's well worth my lungs' safety. So anyway, boy, I think this took close to an hour to burn. It really doesn't matter unless you don't want to take that much time. And there are other settings you can use. And it depends on your laser burner too. If you're just buying one and you're new to this, you really need to do some testing and see exactly what your burner is capable of, the intensity, the distance of the laser head to the item that you're burning. So there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. But this one turned out pretty cool. I really like it. I like that it's a fill and it's predominantly dark. Now when I was finished, I colored in those white areas or unburned areas of this clock face with I think I used an early American stain, so it's not too dark, but it's contrasty enough and gives more of a realistic feel with the, not white but brown of this bear. And finally, my third clock face with the elk on it. This is a line etching, and I really like the way this one turned out. I like the way all of them turned out, but this one I can fill in. Again, I did fill it in with early American stains, so it turned out pretty nice. And you can use different kinds of materials. You can do a test before you do that if you want to try to apply this to any object that you make with laser burning incorporated. Now, I didn't tell you, but this material is like 1/8 inch plywood, and it was flat, which is very important. If it isn't flat and it doesn't stay stable when you're burning it, you'll just have a big mess. Now, that top mountain in the back that it's burning now is a fill, so that's critical to know also. So once the piece was finished and it pushes the laser head over to the front left corner of the machine, I looked at it and I thought, I think I want more detail in this. So I went over the entire piece. You can't move the piece, by the way, but I went over the entire piece to darken the lines themselves. And in the end, this was a really good decision. It turned out great. So I cut the shape of the clock face with the angles at the top for the hood and the sides and the bottom all to fit, and then I brought them over to my table and sanded them. After thinking about this, I thought I should have thought twice about sanding in front of the keyboard. That probably wasn't a really good idea. I probably won't do that again. I definitely don't need sawdust in the keyboard. So when you do a laser burn, it actually burns away the surface of the wood, but it leaves this ash. And it's darker, but it just smears and bleeds, and it looks kind of crappy. So I'm trying to get rid of it without pushing it into the blonde areas of this wood. And with a couple, I did it with a wet paper towel. So with a couple of swipes, I was able to get it off. And you can see it's lighter, but that's acceptable. If you look at the detail, you can see that it has carved it out, and you still have the depth. Maybe if I stain this first, or seal it first with some kind of a polyurethane or a finish. It's much better. Okay. Here are the 3 final clock faces that I did pre-finish. I did a little stain on some of them, but I will be adding to those in part 2 of this series.